Hi. So you've come back for part 2 of the terrible Draglin Hogney. As you remember, in part 1, the first brother was given the horse, and we all know what happened to him. Part 2. Meanwhile, back at the small cottage, the old man waited in vain for any news from his oldest son. Waited quite a long time. A year, in fact, passed. No news from the son. He didn't show up. He didn't come back with riches and treasures. And the old man began to feel worried for him. Nonetheless, the middle son, he came up with the same plan. He said, "Father, it's time that I went off into the world and made my fortune, and I'll come back and we'll live like kings." And the old man said, "Well, okay, I can't give you a horse. All I can give you is my faithful hunting dog." And he gave him his dog. And the dog was running around sniffing all around in the floor and everything, sniffing all around. One of those hunting dogs that sniffs everywhere. And the young man took the dog, waved goodbye to his family. He went down the path to the main track, the bottom of the pathway. And he walked off through the fields, over the hill, down the other side, past the mountains, and he too came to the forest. And he too walked into the forest, and it got darker and darker, and his dog was sniffing every tree, going around sniffing all the trees. Darker and darker it got. The trees started to come in closer and closer over the young man. He started to get a little bit frightened, but he had his dog with him, so he didn't feel too bad. Finally, the bushes were so close, the pathway just came to an end. And he looked all around. What should I do? Then he saw it in the distance. A small light, and he made his way with his dog to that light. You know what happened. The bushes opened up. There was the huge castle. The drawbridge was down. The portcullis was up. And he walked across with his sniffing dog all the way across the portcullis to the drawbridge, under the portcullis, down the corridor. He came to the door. He thought, "I'll just take a look what's on the other side of this door. I'll just quietly open, try and quietly open this door." Okay, that wasn't so quiet. And he went in with his dog, tied his dog up to a table leg. Behind him, the door closed. He looked around. Everything was huge. Huge table, huge chair, huge fireplace, huge cooker. Everything was massive. And he climbed up on the chair and looked down at the table, and there was a beautiful sight. A giant bowl of hot steaming porridge and a giant wooden spoon. And he was very, very hungry. So he took the spoon and started to eat the porridge. Eating the porridge, eating the porridge. Then he heard it. Footsteps getting louder and louder. The door handle, he looked towards the door thinking, "Please, door handle, please don't turn." The door handle turned. The door started to open. It was very creaky. It was the creakiest door of all time. And then it came. The terrible Draglin Hogney. A giant of a man. The long straggly hair. The red eye, the yellow eye hanging down. The big crusty bogey hanging right down. And even his tongue came out. Could touch it. And the young man was like, gross. In his beard, all the pieces of food. And in the nest, 4 baby chicks with their mouths open, looking for food. The Draglin Hogney turned, looked at the young man like this. And the young man, who had the spoon in his hand, looked at the Draglin Hogney like this. And the Draglin Hogney continued to look at the young man like this. And it was all the young man could do but sit there in terror, like this. And finally the Draglin Hogney spoke. And he said to the young man, "Your dog, does your dog ever bite you?" And the young man thought, well, I'm surprised at the question. I thought he was going to ask why I was eating his porridge, but okay, I can go with this. Yeah, sometimes that dog does bite me. It's a bit snappy, that dog. It can bite sometimes. Here, take this. And from his beard, he pulled out a disgusting, crusty, horrible, wiry, orange beard hair and handed it to the young man. And he took it. I could smell it. It was so disgusting. There's a fireplace behind you. Turn around and throw the hair into the fire so that it burns. You will never be bitten by that dog ever again. Okay. And he turned around to throw the hair into the fire. And as he did so, guess what? From his pocket, the Draglin Hogney took out the white stick, touched the young man in the back of the head. Down he fell to the ground as if he were dead. That's like dead, but not dead. Everything went dark for the middle sun. The Draglin Hogney put the white stick back into his pocket. And that's the end of the second part of the Draglin Hogney, the terrible Draglin Hogney. As you know, fairy tales, there's always a third son or a third daughter or a third person, okay? And that person usually has a little bit more common sense than the first two. And funnily enough, it's always the youngest one. Pretty much, right? So let's see what happens tomorrow when the youngest brother is given the third gift by the father. Give you a clue. And when he goes off to face the terrible Draglin Hogney. I'll see you then, okay?